Each year, the Product Agility podcast goes on tour. We get to go to some of the best conferences and interview some of the most influential speakers out there. And this year is no different. We kick off our TalkInTen initiative for 2024 by visiting Lean Agile London. Lean Agile London is a fantastic community event which has a lot of soul and a lot of energy to it. They've also attracted some of the best speakers I've seen on a lineup for a long time. Over the next few days, we are going to be bringing you as many of these speakers' talks in 10 as we possibly can do. Each of these episodes will be recorded on the ground in the moment, so you may hear some background noise. I hope that adds to the ambience and makes it feel like you're there with us. This episode of the Product Agility Podcast is sponsored by Aha Slides, your solution for more engaging and productive team meetings. Transform your team's learning experience with Aha Slides AI-powered tools designed to quickly generate quizzes and interactive content. Boost engagement and efficiency in one go. Well, what more can you ask for? Visit ahaslides.com and use the exclusive discount code ProdAgility2024 to get 50% off of all yearly plans. Now, shall we get on to our talk in 10? Hello and welcome to the Product Agility Podcast. This is one of the, and I need to think about this sentence, one of the talks in 10 from Lean Agile London 2024, but this is the penultimate talk in 10 that we'll be recording. And this recording is happening after the event because there was just lots of people to talk to and not a lot of time. However, this is an episode with a difference because I am on the receiving end of the questions today because we are joined by Henriette and Shelby, whose episode I'm sure you have listened to on VUCAR, which is
the pirate,
like a pirate, like a West Country bumpkin. For those of you from the UK. Now, it's a great episode. Well, I asked these two wonderful people the questions. Now they're going to be asking me the questions. So I will shut up and say, Shelby and Henriette, feel free to interview me for my talk in 10.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. This is a very weird because you've interviewed me now a couple of times, and so it's weird to be on the other side. But let's give it a shot. So you did a talk at Lean Agile London. You stepped in and you gave a really good talk about Blurry to brilliant, simplifying your product vision for the organisation. So just tell me a bit about that. Why have you decided that was the track and the talk that you would speak to?
Well, I reflected and thought maybe I should have simplified the title because there was too many words in it. That was my first thought. But then why was it a topic that I was really interested in? Because of two books and a person. The first book I read was Radical Product Thinking by Radhika Dutt. Amazing book, amazing person, which it helped me with my startup really focus on less in a way. And then I read a book called Radical Focus. There's a theme here, right? The word radical, which taught me a lot about OKRs. And the person that put me on Radical Focus was Jeff Gotthelf. And so where I'd got to was I just began to realize all of a sudden, like a light bulb moment for me, is all the years I've been teaching about large-scale Scrum and simplicity and changing organizational structures and reduce the number of backlogs and reduce the number of product owners. Actually, I think some of the missing link in all my experience or the case studies that I've done is having that real radical focus on the product visions and the OKRs, which was impossible because of the complexity of the organization. And so I just saw this link that I hadn't quite seen before, which is if you don't have a clear, simple structure to your organization, which is aligned to its true purpose, then any product vision you have, and I would argue most OKRs you're going to have, are just going to be a bit shit. And so I made this talk because I thought that this was an interesting perspective that maybe people hadn't really thought of before.
So thank you, Ben. What I liked about your talk, I mean, we both were present at Lean Agile London when you gave your talk. And what I really liked is that you came up with a lot of messages where you said, this is what I thought, and this is what it wasn't like when I was on my path finding out about this. So can you give us a little bit of that? Because you were giving some examples where you were saying like, and this is how I thought it should be. And then I realized, not at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I love that feedback because I felt the talk went well in so much that it just kind of came out of me and it felt right. And I loved every single second of doing it. And those moments where I began to share how clever I thought I was before realizing that actually I wasn't very clever. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize what I was saying. Almost like I'd put them in as the slides, but I never practice a presentation before I give it. So that was the first time I'd ever run it through. And so as I was saying, I was like, wow, okay, yeah. Like when I used to say that visions are for visionaries, and I thought product visions didn't work because they weren't, the people who were creating them just weren't capable of having that vision. They're not Steve Jobs, they're not Bill Gates, to pick up some obvious examples. I thought that was a reason. And it was only when I began to look at the ties between organisational complexity and the effectiveness of a product vision that I thought, actually, I was wrong with that. And so then I just wanted to almost give people my thought process. I wanted people to help me hear me think out loud about your vision.
That was really good to hear when you were giving it, because you were going with the slides and you would like put in the first statement and like in the next slide would be wrong. And then I came up with this idea, and then you would, again, delete the text sort of and put it differently. So what struck me most as well, it was just this process on the one hand. And then as well, you had already slides where you go like, this I have to take a photo of. I can't see this because I took it with my iPhone. I want to make sure I was a panelist as well, to have from all the speakers like relevant slates already on my phone right after. So I took this photo and like, you don't have to be a visionary. You just have to care. I'm like, yeah, very good, very good, very good. And the next slide which comes up is, you just delete everything. Okay. And I'm like, okay, this was not the right photo I took.
But actually, tying that back in, because actually I think whilst you just described like your thought process and then everything that Henrietta said, the one thing that you did do was radically take it back to simplicity. There was nothing like, I don't know whether your train of thought was, well, okay, I've read all these great books, been a bit radical about it, but simplicity is key. I mean, and we've talked lots about simplicity, but you basically said simplicity. I think your quote was, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication or satisfaction.
Yeah.
So explain that to me. Why do you think simplicity is now key then, Ben?
Because I don't think we've tried it.
So
I in organizations, I don't think people actually understand simplicity. I don't think people challenge themselves on simplicity. I think every person that I speak to, every client I walk into, that no one ever says that things are simple. Everyone always says that things are complicated or complex. And there was something that I said to somebody in the audience, which was, if the answers to your questions were obvious, if your solutions to the challenges you face were obvious, you'd already be doing them. So you have to accept that the things you need to try aren't the obvious things, they're non-obvious. And then you have to appreciate that the way you've been working and the way that you're structured isn't generating non-obvious solutions. So in order to find non-obvious solutions, you have to do things in a different way. And I think this is where people are stuck. I think we made great strides in the products and agile community, but I still think that no one really truly understands simplicity. And I think for me, and Henrietta, you spoke about that thought process I was explaining, the conclusion that I came to, which for me is just so simple, and when I say it sounds so obvious, is that we don't create product groups or organizations that actually provide the context for people to really care about the end person they're affecting. And I think if you can do that and you can create that context and allow people to actually care for the customers or the users or whoever it is you're really trying to affect their world, improve their lives in some way, then I think we can do much better things than we're capable of. But you're not going to create that context to care unless you really go for some real radical simplicity.
And I think that, touching on that we have organisations, not just the organisations I've worked in and Henrietta works in, but I think the three of us can pull on many examples of that. We create complexities. I think organisations are set up with complexity in mind. And you did say at one point, I think, and I did laugh. Nobody gives a shit. And I know that you said that, and I just kind of like said, "Oh, isn't that a bit?" And I go, "Use your words. It's a bit radical for somebody to stand up and give a talk and say, I don't give a shit,' because like we act so professional when we're out on the circuit and talk, but actually, a customer doesn't give a shit about our vision because they don't see it. All they see is our product, right? So actually simplicity does work in that favor. But then inside, what is the customer saying? Because I'm a customer of the organisation I work in, business to business, department to department. But we have created layering and complexity within inside the organisation. So given all of that, what would be the one thing if you were to walk into any organisation today, where would you start with that? How would you say to the very senior people and the people then on the shop floor, like, don't give a shit, let's make it simple, but be radical in that thinking?
But do you know what? The one question I always pose to people, and probably more senior in the organisation, is the more effective the question is. I just always say, tell me what the single most important thing everyone should be working on right now, and whose world is it directly impacting, and tell me how it's going. And most senior people can't answer that question, not because they're stupid and not because they've been given information, but they're not set up to have focus. We start too much and we have too much in progress. And I think people want to better answer that question, but I don't think people can. And I think that we overcomplicate things when we have product visions which explicitly try and serve too many people. And I think this is where we just really hone it all down and see if we can just create a much better golden thread from the actual real beneficiary through to everybody that's working at the ground level.
And I actually love those 3 questions, because actually that just will give you the context. So where are we? What's your biggest problem? Right? They're very simple questions that you ask somebody. How does it impact people? That's going to give people the context to be able to work in the system that we work in. So I adore that. Theoretically, though, walking into £1 million organisation and just saying those to a very senior executive will cause us some hassle. So what do you do then if you get all of that resistance?
And I smile when I say it.
I love that, Ben. You, of course, you smile.
I just smile.
And what a great smile you have, Ben. What a great smile you have.
Yeah, check out the YouTube video, everyone. Check out my smile. No, I think it's a difficult one. Now, I'm not saying that that it's easy, and maybe I wouldn't go in with that straight off. But for example, one client I worked with, and it's the longest client I've had since I've had my own business, my own consultancy firm, and I was working predominantly with the product team, and I worked with. In fact, I'm still working with them. I won't mention any names, but when I started with them, I spent 6 to 8 weeks getting to know everyone. You call it discovery work, but I was doing discovery work, but I spoke to as many people as I could, and I treated each conversation like a conversation where I wanted them to leave with something new. I wanted them to leave enriched, but me to leave with information that I required. So the moment I got them in a room all together for a workshop, value stream mapping type exercise, and I was able to turn around to the senior people in this organisation from the whole organisation and say that one of your biggest problems is you can't have the hard conversations with your leadership team.
100%.
And it was a risk, and they took it, but because they trusted me and they respected me. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not giving this to anyone, saying that anyone should go and do this, but I think that you get a good feel for things over the years, and if you've got some of the experience behind you, I think you can get away with pushing things a bit more.
So you mean you come back a little bit about the caring, but that means you create the context, you create a connectivity to the context so that you can care and they care and trust as well. And that makes it possible to do then the work we have to do and to focus on.
Yeah.
To be able to speak out loud, to be able to talk about the elephant in the room, basically, and start trying to find the solutions for whatever it is at stake at the moment, right?
Yeah. And
I think with you, sorry, Ben, to cut over you, but I think then to something else you had said on one of your slides, and I did take a screenshot of it, and I can remember looking at it and going, well, actually, so he said simplicity, he talks about being radical. We've just now had the conversation about people being able to trust you and connect into you. Providing data and measurement goes to the slide that you said about clarity, measurement, and accountability. And I think to your point, you just said, they trust me because I have experience and I can talk to it. I've got that knowledge. You can go in. There has to be some clarity, measurement, and accountability with you doing your role as a consultant. So how do you best do that for yourself? And I'm not asking you to obviously, we're all coaches here. We all do whatever we need to do. But you then uniquely, Ben, in your day job, you seek clarity, you seek measurement, you seek accountability. How do you go about that for you? I'd like to know a little bit more about how Ben's style works with his clients.
Well, I'll keep it brief, and maybe we can catch up about this in another episode.
Love to.
But I think that, like, my path to where I am today wasn't straightforward, and I've always been a bit of a blagger, I suppose. I've always had to find ways to kind of to get by. And one of the skills I developed early on was the ability to get along with people and to empathize and to really put myself in their shoes. And the most successful engagements I've had is when I can walk into a room and I can put myself in their shoes, or I can put myself in their customer's shoes, and I can speak honestly about that. And the advice that I give is advice from empathy, because I create my own internal context to care, to pick up on Henrietta's point. So when I was working with a particular client, working on some OKRs, not a domain that I had direct experience in, right? But I understood the market, I understood kind of the economics of it, and I understood the pain that a particular customer was going through. So for me to be able to help them come up with something was just a case of me empathizing my socks off. You know, and people want, and then they want to know, like, why is it valuable? Well, like, because at the end everyone was like, fantastic, and they want me back. And I think that it's about delivering that value there and then, and that's what I try to do every time.
And on the other hand, you could say, like, could everyone just walk in and like connect to people, be like, talking with them, and that's enough, and they trust you, and that's how you do it?
No.
Or is there another basis to it as well? I mean, yes, it's right. This is, after all, what you have to do.
But I
think, but also it is something they also have to trust you that you can do it. If it comes to like the content that you're selling, sort of, right? Yeah. The expertise.
Totally. And I think there's one thing that I feel when I speak to great people like yourselves, both of you, that, and even when you say it, part of your thing you said is because I care. And I think those people that have that empathy and they care, that just shines, and people feel comfortable with that, so they trust it. And I think if that's how you build your trust inside your client or the organization you work with, you will obviously get that empathy, that trust build, and then you can be radical, and you can talk simplistically. You can talk about, the ambiguity that's inside them, and ask them those really clear, simple questions to ask them where they are with all of their work. I think that came beautifully across in your slides and what you're saying, and even just talking to you now, I think I can see that resonate out of you, and why people then are drawn to having those conversations with you, Ben. And that's not just me giving you kudos, because I feel like that when I talk to you anyhow. But even with Henry, even when I speak with Henrietta, again, she gives off that, there's like a buzz about it. And there's, I think certain people can do that and go into organisations where other people, and this is another conversation for another day, as I said, was saying to you earlier on, will take a 2-day course and think they can walk into an organisation and tell a CEO how to run their organisation and their product, and not actually sit down and connect to that human being from a empathy, care perspective.
That was me. And then I went on my own and started a business. And actually, and then started another business, and then tried to, and then
don't do,
and then tried to launch I'm launching a software product and have another business. You got to put the graft in. And if I was going to write a book, I think today, if you had to force me to think of a title, I'd probably call it Radical Simplicity.
Wow!
And when
breaking news, people.
There we go. It's not going to be a book. Someone steal it and just give me a credit at the front.
I'll do that.
But I think when we think about simplicity, and what I'm saying with how we show up, and the talk that I gave will grow and it will expand. And I'm intending on, I'm booked in at a few different meetups, and who knows where I'll do it at a few different conferences. If you're listening to this podcast and you want me to give it at your organisation, then just email me, ben@benmaynard.uk. And I'll happily arrange to come in and do a talk on it. But, the extension to it would be one, well, first and foremost, and forget the stuff I'm going to put in around kind of maybe some lean UX and that kind of thing. But actually it's stripping it down. If we're going to be radically simplify everything, we need to just simplify how we show up. Right, remember that human element, and and work on building trust and respect. And if you can't do that in that room with those people, and you don't feel like you ever do that in that room with those people, then find yourself a different room of people to be in. Because if you want to have some real radical impact, you really need to kind of connect to that human level in some way. And that doesn't mean being nice, and it doesn't mean necessarily being polite. It doesn't mean being holding their hands and rubbing their back and say it's all going to be okay. It means being a bit of an arsehole sometimes, but that's what it takes.
Yeah. But I think that's something our industry does really badly. I think I mean, again, not blowing my own trumpet here, but last year I talked about consultancy firms, and there's some of them out there that are really great. Like Ben, you are in that space, and then there's other consultancy firms we know that drop in and are not simple. They make things complex. They add to the complexity. To the point me and Henrietta make, they add all of the VUCA to the system that we work in. But I also think coaches don't do themselves some favors either. Mind, I think we go in and think, right, I've been taught this framework. I've got to go in and tell you how to run your product. Do this. You've got to do A, B, and C, and I'm telling you because I'm the agile coach that has that knowledge of that framework. But what we haven't done is on the business acumen side gone, hey, I've got a CEO here. I might never get to speak to him. But when I do speak to him, the first thing I'm not going to say to him is, oh my God, you have to go and do Scrum because I'm a Scrum Agile coach and that's what I'm telling you need to do. The first thing you should do is tie it back to what you just said. Connect to them, care, show them empathy, ask them simple questions.
I mean, that goes both ways, right? What you were 100%. Saying with the context and with the caring, it is like you have to care for them and they care for you. If they see that you really take it up with their problems and really their problems, not just saying like, I know better than you. And, how stupid can you be that you couldn't solve them until now, when I came in. So of course, if you go in that way, it wouldn't work. But if you go in and you show them, I'm with you. I am with you and your problems. I solve them with you together. We find ways. Iteratively, step by step, not because we have to go buy some sort of books, but because we care and because we want to solve them. And then it works both ways.
Yeah, it does. But I'll just keep it on the time we've got. We've said talking 20, so maybe we'll start to wrap it up. But my father-in-law, and I want to give everyone this bit of advice because it's a great piece of advice that I am trying to really imbue in what I do. And it's something my father-in-law said to me, who's I don't think my wife listens to the podcasts. Maybe my children will at some point. And I'll realise this is the granddad I'm talking about. But he was involved in agricultural world in selling feed, actually. And he was successful. He was really successful. But he said that he had a boss and early in his career, and he thought to himself, right, how do I impress the boss? And what he decided was he wanted to figure out what the 3 questions the CEO is going to ask himself every morning when he wakes up about work. What are the first 3 things that pops into his head? And he spoke to them and he found out what they were. Yeah, and it was one agricultural type thing. The other one was revenue, and the other one was like number of clients they've lost or something. So he made it his job to make sure that he was helping out with those things and that he had answers to those things. And he succeeded because of that. And I think that product coaches, because they often have a lot more experience in doing, are great at tuning into that, and they know what those 3 questions might be. I think in the agile coaching world, I think there's a handful of agile coaches out there that maybe do. I think there's a lot that maybe wouldn't have a clue where to start. But I mentioned start. I'm now going to mention end. Henrietta and Shelby, thank you so much for interviewing me. I've really enjoyed it. It turns out I like talking about myself.
Oh, Ben, we should do it more often. I love talking to you. I love listening to you and talking to you. I could ask you 1,001 questions, and I'm assuming, given that me and Henrietta can speak for our respective countries, as they say, we could probably ask you 1,001 questions.
Well,
but it's been a delight.
Let's find a way to make something happen.
Yeah, and
1 in 100 then, or 1 in a million.
We'd be here all year.
Yeah,
your talk was amazing. I definitely want to see it evolve, and I definitely would like to see it on the other side. I am going to steal your idea of radical simplicity, and I will give you a foreword in the book when I get around to writing it in my crazy time. And definitely look forward to more talks and getting to work with you at some point. Henrietta.
Let's start connect and care.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much for interviewing me, and thank you everyone for listening. This is, so the penultimate TalkInTen. There'll be one more coming out. So thank you for tuning in, and do let us know what you think of the TalkInTen series on LinkedIn. It's the best place to find us, or TikTok. Send us an abusive comment or two. We get a few of those every now and again. Thank you for listening. I've been Ben Maynard, and this is the Product Agility Podcast.